Do you think they leak?
Hi, my name is Madeline Thornton-Smith and this is my studio. Hi, this is my studio. My studio is in West Heidelberg, which is in the north of Melbourne. I'll do a little show around of the main things I've got set up here today. A lot of the works over here are frame pieces that I made while I was overseas a couple of years ago, just before the pandemic. I mean, obviously when I'm working in the studio I don't have them all laid out like this, but just to give everyone an idea of what my work's about. So these are pieces, most of which I made when I was on residency in Peru a couple of years ago at Cotto Designs. So I was in Lima and I did a 10-week residency, and for a while I wasn't actually sure what I wanted to make there, but I started getting quite inspired by my walks to the studio, where I'd see these textured walls that were on the buildings. So after a while I decided I would start actually putting clay on the walls, and that's how you get these textured pieces. Those are textures of the walls there in a suburb called Barranco, which is kind of similar to, if you're familiar with Melbourne, it's a little bit like Collingwood, or if say you're familiar with New York, it's sort of like your Brooklyn suburbs, are sort of edgy in a suburb. And I also got quite interested in the frames, which you call, like, a frame is a marco in Spanish. Yeah, if you're familiar with a lot of Latin American folk art, the frame is very important. You might see often like a virgin in the middle or an icon. I guess I was more interested in the frame itself because that's been an area of ongoing research for me. The frame as a common support, I guess, in the Western tradition, it's simply a support for the real art, which is the painting in the middle or the drawing in the middle. But for me, the actual frame itself is art, and there is a tradition to frame making in itself, particularly in places like Latin America. So another thing I got interested in when I was studying at university was the idea of casting paintings and creating archetypes that are found in art and ceramics, like the frame and the plinth and the canvas. So I particularly honed in on painting because I originally studied painting. This is a new one that I made recently. There's a little bit of a render in the middle there, and then I've got the texture of the paint around the outside. This is a little one I really like. It's actually, the outside is paper mache, but the inside is a little bit of cast paint. Just a small example. On these ones, I've also got textures, like the textures of studio materials you'd find when packing ceramics, such as bubble wrap and polystyrene cubes. I'm really interested in these textures too, because they're also kind of considered discarded materials, I suppose, in the studio that you would just throw out once you're done with them, but I'm elevating these textures and materials too. So here's an example I'm quite proud of. I have this cast painting sitting on its own easel. So if you can see, I'll pick it up. You can see the texture of the painting, and on the back you can also see the staples and the folds of the canvas, and it's those little details I'm really interested in. And also asking the question, if you have this replica of a painting, and often I make pieces like this and then I frame them and I sell them in art galleries that also sell paintings, how is the value of a cast painting different to a real painting? Why is it usually priced lower because it's ceramic than oil and canvas? I guess it comes down to the tradition of the hierarchy that exists in Western fine art, and ceramics was often treated as a lowly decorative art. But I suppose I'm trying to elevate ceramics so it's at that level of the high art, inverted commas. I'll talk a little bit now about my process. So when I'm doing slip casting, generally I have to make a mold first using plaster of what texture I want to cast. So with these ones, I've cast things like expanding foam, polystyrene, I've got bubble wrap over here, and I've got concrete render. Over here as well, I've got, these are some of my painting molds. So this is that painting mold I showed you before. Here's a big painting mold at the back and some smaller ones. This is one of my favorite ones. It's a two-part painting mold. And here I've got classic shells. I got a little bit obsessed with shells. This is this one before from Peru with the little mollusk. I love my shell molds. I often use them as decorations for my frames. So when I'm slip casting, I usually have to start off by just mixing up my slip, because it does kind of solidify, but once you get it going again, it's nice and runny again. Some people make their own slip, but because I'm pretty time poor, I work a few jobs as well, I just find it easier to buy slip that's ready to go. So I'm just going to show you how I slip cast with both a 1-piece and a small 2-piece mold, shell molds. This is that same shell that I collected when I was in Peru, and this is a 1-piece mold of a shell. So I've got my slip ready to go. If you've ever done chocolate making, it's very similar to that. So I'm just going to slowly pour the slip in to fill the whole mold. Okay, just a little bit beyond the edge like that. I'll do it with the other one as well. It's pretty easy casting small molds like this. When you have bigger, more complex molds, it's not quite so simple. Okay, and now basically we'll wait until we see the mold sucking out the moisture out of the edge of the piece. So you'll be able to actually see 0.5 millimeter, 1 millimeter, 2 millimeters, probably wouldn't go beyond 2 millimeters, and then you chuck the excess out back into your original container. Okay, so we've left our pieces for a few minutes. Basically, I'd probably usually leave them between 3 and 5 minutes for a mold this small. I mean, with this smaller mold, you could just make it solid, but I've decided to make it hollow. So you can see, maybe that's a couple of millimeters, 3 millimeters max. So I'm going to empty out the excess now. So you can leave that sitting upside down for a while, but this one doesn't have that much clay in it, so you can kind of do it just in one. And see how that's our piece that we'll let dry and then we'll take out of the mold. Same with our 2-part mold. Very carefully empty out the slip over our container. There's no rush. What I would recommend is just putting it upside down and just leaving it for a minute or two. And then with these pieces, you can't take them out until the slip is dry. So see how it's still quite shiny and wet? Probably have to wait another 10 minutes for it to be dry at least. And then it'll be ready to take out. Okay, so now we've waited about 10 minutes. I've tested this one. This one comes out really easily. So you'll notice it's not so shiny in the middle now. So the slip has dried somewhat. So we can just easily bring that out, and that's your cast piece. And if you want to attach it to things, make sure you do it before the piece dries, because you'll find it dries pretty quickly. Now we'll try the 2-part mold. So I'll remove the elastic bands. And this is 2-part because there's a little mollusk on it that would catch if we made it 1 part. So there's, you can see 1 part there. Yep. And then we can use that to gently pull it out. Probably could leave this one a little longer, but it's still a bit soft, but you can still get it out. Here we go. And then I'd spend a little bit of time trimming the edges, and you can see that seam line there too. Just getting rid of that. And then your piece is ready to go.
Hi, my name's Narayani and this is my studio. And this is my dog Tootsie. It's also my son's barbershop. My garden shed, my storeroom, and my studio. I just wanted to show that you don't have to have a beautiful purpose-built, oh, and there's Max, purpose-built studio with panoramic views to create. Some trestle tables, in my case a wheel, and shelving is really all you need. I do 3 types of work. I do sgraffito vases. I keep the design simple and contemporary, and I work in 5 colours. I also do pit firing, which I do at home in the driveway and invite my neighbours round for food and wine. And I have a special interest in naked raku. And I have a little bit of a view.
Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Johnson. I'm the curator here at Newcastle Art Gallery. It's my pleasure today to take you on a behind the scenes of our latest exhibition, Domestic Bliss, Functional Works from the Collection. The exhibition celebrates functional wear from the collection by some of Australia and Japan's greatest artists. What does that mean? Well, it means everything from jugs and plates and teapots and bowls, things that you might think are fairly benign, but this exhibition aims to showcase the diversity of artists, some of Australia's living treasures, some of Australia's greatest teachers, and some of the greatest students of ceramics that we've got to know, and a new generation of artists that are creating some really interesting avant-garde wares that might sort of change your perception of what functional ceramics really are. Ceramics exhibitions are quite unique to install because you're not just placing a work of art onto a wall, you're actually placing items onto plinths in a configuration we call in the round, so that people can actually walk around the vessel. So with that, you've got to think about where a plinth and a work of art is in the space, how people will interact with it, how close they can get to it, and also because it is a fragile material, you want to make sure that it is safe and secure. Thematically, we want to lay out the exhibition so there's a storyline that people can follow, so you can actually see contrast and you can see complementary techniques and processes, glazes, synergies and harmonies. So I'm going to show you some of my favourite works in the exhibition, including an exciting new acquisition of works by Tony Albert. This is a series called Piracy, and it's a series of domestic vintage plates that traditionally would acknowledge the colonial history of Australia. And as a very politically activated artist, Tony has taken these and augmented them into the representation of a skull. So it's a bit of an allegory about the 250th anniversary of Cook. Another favourite body of work of mine in the collection is by Pippin Drysdale. It's a really extraordinary example of not only the technical prowess of the artist being able to throw, but also this application of lustre. And it really is like a journey through the cosmos. If you actually have a look inside the vessels themselves, it's just an extraordinary kind of abstract skyscape and a bit of a journey that these works take you on. Another favourite piece from the collection is a work by Dr. Thankupi Gloria Fletcher, AO. It's called Wakom the Bushman from 2001. Thankupi was the first Indigenous artist to go to the National Art School to learn ceramics, and the important cultural stories that are depicted in her ceramics are vital, and we're absolutely delighted that we have a work of hers in the collection. Another special piece in the exhibition is a new acquisition to the collection by Shigeya Shiga. It's an extraordinarily elegant piece that belies the technicality and the prowess of Shiga, not only as a practitioner, but his influence as a teacher at the National Art School. In this collection and this exhibition, you'll see some really exquisite works of art. We're really proud that we have such a great collection here in Newcastle and delighted that you'll be able to share in experiencing it this summer.
I think the ideas in the work, it's a lot about how I feel about nature and the landscape, community, all that sort of thing. So I want the work to, and everything around the work, how it's produced, to really reinforce that strong love of those ideas, I suppose. So I really wanted to develop something as intimate as wood firing. I go out into the landscape and collect the wood and fire the kiln, feed the kiln. It's a really intimate thing to do, and I'm sure that really strengthens the idea and the concepts in the work. I don't like the idea of just switching a button or or things like that. And I think it does give the work a uniqueness in terms of colours and textures and all that sort of thing. So I actually dig materials sometimes that are included in the glazes. I also dig local clay that's included in the clay bodies. But I actually really enjoy that technical part of the process because it keeps me really engaged with nature.
I come up to the studio and generally it's a process of whatever I'm doing has more than one stage to it. So the clay work, generally I'll make a series of say 10 to 50. So then that becomes making the form, and then the next day after it's gone leather hard I can start playing with the carving and adding bits and pieces, and just the work depends on how I get up in the morning, really depends on what I do with it. It's a very emotional, responsive, creative process, I think. But it's great to have another creative person next door, and we quite often discuss everything from what's happening in the ceramics world at the moment to what we're doing with glazes and firing methods, and Malcolm's process driven in regard to the wood firing. So we go over and I'll take a cup of tea over and we'll sit and chat for an hour, and then we might see each other for 2 days. Yeah, it's a nice relationship that's not, I don't think it'd work if we were in each other's pockets. I think, as I say, we don't see each other for days sometimes, or I'll just wave.
My name's Penny Evans. I'm an artist. I'm a Gamilaroi artist. Being in process and working creatively brings culture back. Like, it's in our genes, our culture's inside us. I think as Aboriginal people, we're entrepreneurial, we're business people from thousands and thousands of years. I make money and I invest it back into my business. That's the first thing I do with all my art supplies and everything. I've always got exactly what I need at my fingertips to work. I'm really happy that IBA's chosen to use the Spirit Dreaming design. The design has a lot of integrity and it's a very unified design because it has that sort of deeper meaning about the deep structures of nature and our natural environment, you know, where our culture has sprung from and where we have all evolved from. My hopes for my children's future are that they, you know, work hard and pursue whatever it is that they would like to pursue. I mean, my main thing I tell my children is you've got to do things a lot, do things over and over again. To get good at anything, you've got to do it over and over again. I've had to work really hard to get to where I am today, and I am a hard worker, and most blackfellas I know are really hard working, and we just need to, you know, heal and deal with a lot of trans and intergenerational trauma that people are in, and yeah, move forward, you know, hopefully get financial support from IBA to, you know, start and grow businesses whereby it can fan out into communities and employ people and, you know, support people in their creative endeavours, because we're a very creative people. We're entrepreneurial and we're creative.
I started surfing when I was 15, and pottery always seemed like a good way of making the income that you needed to fill your car up with petrol so you could get to the beach and you know, live a fairly minimal lifestyle. So I spent a lot of time doing that. There was a guy called Bernard Leach, basically, that wrote a book in 1940 called The Potter's Book, and it hasn't been out of print since. And he worked in St Ives in an artist colony in England, but he was born in Hong Kong, and he was a printmaker, and he got taught to make pots in a sort of an Oriental tradition. And he brought this idea to the West that you could, you know, set up a studio and make pots and sell them and kind of make a living out of them. I kind of like that idea. I like that thing that you don't have to be part of mainstream society in a way, that you can kind of sort of forge your own, slightly, your own little path. Everything you make really comes from the last thing that you made. And so that's my conceptual approach to things. It's really just like a continuous bloodline, I guess, of experimentation and exploration of what you can do with the material. What ceramics does to people, I think, is it develops a philosophical approach to failure in people. And failure is used as a weird term, because I don't think there is failure. None of it's failure. It's all just research. It's all just learning and research. And people think that because that thing blew up in the kiln, or because that cracked, or that didn't look any good, it's a failure. Well, it's not. It's just like look at it and kind of learn from it, and then take it to the next step. Keep working through that thing of one thing leads to another. I think there'll always be a place for handmade objects. in people's lives, because it kind of puts you in touch with an idea that we are all kind of ephemeral and we're all part of a bigger thing, which is mainly like this planet, I guess, and that we're kind of linked to it in a way. So I guess it's a kind of nice cosmic idea that, you know, the handmade puts you in touch with something. I'm blessed that I can, you know, go up to my shed and just make whatever I want to, weird things, yeah. And they're always different and they're always kind of exciting, you know, yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Pi Bolton and I want to welcome you to the Kiln Room, my beautiful studio in Naarm, Melbourne, Australia. It's in an industrial area, but only 15 minutes away there are kangaroos living beside a beautiful lake. My practice springs from the earth. Some of my first memories are of lying flat out, nose to the ground, scrabbling in the damp earth to squeeze under the fence to steal the McGregor's peas. The desire to touch the earth and keep it close has never left. I have a framed print hanging at the entrance of my studio. It is of an earthenware tin glazed plate found in a London sewer with the inscription, "You and I are Earth, 1661. The connection is deep. Others have felt it too." These are my trusty and loved kilns. I have 2 natural gas kilns and lots of electric kilns in my studio. You can find out more about the kilns in the Kiln Room on my website. I always put a few copper red glaze tests in these kilns to keep a handle on what's happening during reduction firing. I also fire these at temperatures other than stoneware, like lower temperature reductions and saggers. These kilns are great for bisque as well. I have a long history with ceramics and love to collect the work of others, and I'm always changing the work I have on surfaces and walls in my studio. At the end of my street there is a national park full of fabulous animals. Here is an echidna looking for ants with Bourbon saying hello. She is a most wonderful dog and has saved native animals stuck in difficult places, like a possum stuck under a set of tipped over drawers. Every time a new product comes into the studio, I test it on different clays at different temperatures with different thicknesses of application. I also fire samples of all of the types of clay I can get my hands on to bisque, earthenware, mid-fire and stoneware oxidation and reduction. This creates a great studio resource. I have two gorgeous kelpies who keep me company in the studio. This is Police Point Shire Park, where I've been awarded a residency this year. I can't wait to make work here. I can think of no better place to consider the histories and temporalities of place than Police Point Shire Park. A park with which I have an intimate relationship. The multiple layers of geology, coastal change, indigenous, settler, modern, with complexities at every intersection. Every day I see another clue to the stories which whisper their way through the park. The recording of these motifs in a ceramic body of work is of importance to me. Through my conversations with clay, a synergy is generated, amplifying the meaning of the process. The tendencies and capacities of the clay converse with my own. We are equal partners. There are other voices in the process too, the particle sizes within the clay, the moisture content, the embedded oxides and inclusions, the shortness, the air temperature, humidity, wind and flow of air all leave their mark in the process. The tools I use also have their say, mostly my hands but other things too, like mallets, sharp metal tools, shaped wooden tools and wire loops. There is a deeper connection with some of these. The applewood mallet gifted to me in China, my grandmother's rolling pin, a lonely chopstick, my father-in-law's flat, bone-handled cocktail fork. There are machines involved in the process of my practice, kilns and power tools, concrete saws and grinders. I have little control over these machines, but the uncertainty of outcome is appreciated. I'm comfortable to be submissive. The cut. There is usually a cut in the work. Reasons for the cut are varied, to emphasize a viewpoint, to offer direction of looking, maybe to acknowledge that there is an inside, a secret interior, usually hidden. I am tricked, though, when the cuts create other outsides. Sometimes the cut is covered with precious metal to acknowledge the impact of mankind on the earth, highlighting the injury of exploitation. Maybe the cut is a reminder that there are precious things, unknown things out of view. Maybe they should be left that way. The cut may be illuminated, accentuating a grid. The cut may be infinitely reflected, connected and disconnected. A portal to another space. A space other than the one in which we stand. Another dimension, perhaps inaccessible. The infinite reflections are layered into a stratigraphy, endless, deep time. Of course, we could never have a visit to my neck of the woods without visiting some kangaroos. These kangaroos live in the wild, just 15 minutes from my studio. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to welcome you to my studio should you ever find yourself in my neck of the woods. Bye!
The Warrandyte Pottery Expo has been held on the banks of the Yarra every year for the last 21 years. A popular event for potters and art lovers alike.
There's about 70 stands, and on some of those stands there might be 2 potters. We've selected potters with a lot of variety so that there's a great variation of style and technique. And all the potters are here to talk about their work and how they make it and their rationale behind their work. It's a matter of discovery, and I think the highlight is the discovery of what is here to wander around. We're making leaves for Lions Park in Warrandyte down this way. So the kids will all have a go at working with clay, decorating and making marks in the leaves, which will be fired and used in our park in Warrandyte.
Visitors get to explore an array of ceramic wares and hear about the process from the makers themselves.
It is a highlight for the potters to be here because we've been locked away for a year, and it's a real networking opportunity and friendship gathering opportunity to see each other. The talks are really great because you'll hear some of the potters explain their work and get insight into how they function and what goes on in their heads.
Tent talks are basically a way of introducing potters to the public and exploring a little bit more about what they do, why they do it, and showing images as well of their studios, because obviously when people come to a market like this, they're just seeing the end product, but actually to potters it's the making process that's so fascinating as well. So by introducing some of that making process, we feel we're elaborating on the story for the potters.
And it's not just a pottery market. There's live music, food, wine, and a chance to explore the river. But the expo isn't only about high-end art. Clay in all its forms was on display over the two-day event.
This is my first year at the Expo. I've been coming as a visitor and looking and feeling jealous that people are working in the clay and the medium that I absolutely love. And yeah, so I'm really happy to actually have made it this year. It's been really great to talk to people and have a bit of a laugh. My work is very light-hearted and it's not too serious, so it does elicit a lot of laughs and giggles, which has been really nice, and people have been buying it, which is even better.
I love interacting with all the other artists as well as getting feedback from all the customers and just seeing what they really like, and just interacting with the public generally. It's just a really good atmosphere and really good feeling.
I love the expo. Yeah. It's just nice to interact with fellow artisans, some that I don't know. It's always nice to see new and emerging work, but it's nice to catch up with old friends as well. And just to see where people's careers are going.
It's fantastic. I'm so impressed with Jane Anwar and how she started it off and she's kept working at this with great commitment, and it's a solid thing, and it's look at all the people. It's fantastic to think that they're all looking at pots.
I generally make large sculptural work. However, very recently I've been more interested in painting and the different kinds of languages and materials and methodologies that go into painting. Working in ceramics, that's undoubtedly a consideration you make. A glazed surface is in lots of ways a painting surface. These painting methodologies are things we translate into ceramic objects. It's going to go bright red. So like a nice primary, deep, kind of bloody red. It's all the cadmium in it that allows it to do that, all the nasty stuff. Yeah. I like to have really textured surfaces. I want the glaze to be dripping, but I also highlight the material. I'm not interested in masking or creating illusions. It's quite clear that these are ceramics, and in a way the sculptures are performing themselves as ceramics. They're heightened, there's big grins, there's lots of handprints in the surfaces and in the textures. Right now, all these things that you see are for a body of work that's going to be presented at the Art Gallery of New South Wales, as a large-scale installation in the vestibule. The installation is called Avatar Towers, and I was interested in this idea of an avatar. You know, if you look at the actual definition of that term, it's a kind of manifestation of something divine. These bronzes are like heavier and lighter than you'd think at the same time, but they're interesting. They've got this kind of hollow inside, which is kind of similar to the ceramics. The works kind of come alive in this almost exquisite corpse manner. I often make heads, bodies, arms separate, and I join them in a kind of post-production, post-firing sense. What that allows me to do is be quite flexible throughout the process. I never really get attached to a single idea of how I want something to look. But basically I get a bobby pin and I pin it into there, and there's a bit of foam in there. But I actually cut this hair myself as well. I think this is the vibe. I don't know, I think there's a bit of an ambiguity to their expressions that I find engaging. You know, if they're not entirely happy, they might be masking incredible pain with this grin. I think that kind of ambiguity or awkwardness of their faces sometimes is what I'm really interested in expressing. So I think it's a really interesting framework to look at the ceramics that I'm making, because I think it allows people to project themselves onto these things that are inevitably multiple and multi-part and plural. And maybe, I don't know if it will get leather today, but if it does. So my studio in Rydalmere, which is a facility run by Parramatta Artist Studios, exists in this amazing industrial setting where you've got these highly skilled trades people and industries who do really amazing things that are incredibly relevant to artists. All the works in the show are primarily, there's ceramics and bronzes. All the ceramics will be glazed. One work, I really wanted it to stand out, and I kind of went next door and said, can you auto spray ceramics? And they were like, yeah, of course.
We specialise in custom work, restoration work, actually pimp your ride to what level you want to bring it to. We've got an artwork that we're doing for Ramesh. It's similar to how we do a custom car paint job from ground up, but due to being ceramic or whatnot, it's a little bit different. We'll put like a sealer down first, then we'll put the white and then the colour on top of that. We won't stop each interval until each colour is covered. If we don't get the colours to cover the actual true effect of the pink that we are painting it, will not show.
Yeah, this is where the paint's kept. White first to really get a bright effect of the pink coming through. Alrighty.
I'm really excited to see the work being sprayed. I think sometimes artists, or even myself, can feel a bit nervous when you hand your baby to someone else to do something to it. But in a way, I often feel less nervous because I've engaged in a sampling process, so I kind of know what it's going to look like. I know what I'm going to expect. I'm really just excited to see it done so I can, you know, wheel it around and take photos and show people.
It's going to be baked at 60 degrees. Is that right, George?
60 degrees, 40 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Very hard to get it all in a little area.
That's fine. That's fine. I think the variation's good.
Yeah.
Pink is coming out. It's like nail polish.
It's a good stir. It's a very pearly colour, so
yeah.
all the pigment.
Ah, yeah.
It's quite hard.
Oh, okay. What kind of person would paint their car that colour?
So the work being sprayed, it's this weird form. I've conceived it as some kind of fertility figure in some ways. And what's really interesting is that there's often a highly gendered dimension to those representations. But I wanted to create a kind of abstract, amorphous form that gestured to these things of the past that was also kind of species neutral in a way. You know, it has the kind of facial proportions that, you know, a human face might have. Well, I wanted it to feel open. I think the idea to auto spray the ceramic came about as I was really thinking about painting as a language, as a philosophy, as a gesture, and thinking about glaze in relation to that. And I think the auto spraying in a way mimics the glaze in some way, but there's the potential to get colours that just aren't possible to reveal in the kiln. So experimenting with that technology and in this kind of collaborative way, I think will yield some interesting results that I won't actually be able to get if I confine myself to these glazes.
I love that concept of common objects made uncommonly well. And that whole concept applies from my perspective with making work. Like there's no division between, even though some things might be perceived as a more decorative piece, as far as I'm concerned when I'm making each piece, whether it's a cup or it's a large jar or a platter, it's all made with the best aesthetic intentions. And there's no division between, oh, this is functional and that's decorative. And that actually really is, even though there's more decorative sculptural pieces around, like the pillow forms and things like that, I don't make that division at all. And I think I would much rather see a beautiful functional work in the gallery than perhaps an unresolved sculpture piece. Well, I've been away for that long stint, and I got back in '84, and really came back to set up a big project. So I'd built kilns, I'd worked in a lot of places building kilns, so I came back and was looking for land where I could do that. I wasn't going to do it on a rented property. It was going to take me a year to build a kiln, so it had to be on my own property, so of course wanted to be close to wood. I was tempted to move up to that southern coast of New South Wales, which I love. I still love that area, but the logistics at that stage, 10,000 bricks on the front nature strip, and mum and dad prepared to give a hand, because I'd been away for years. And it's funny, when you've been away 5 years, it's like you're remigrating home, so I'd lost track of a lot of old friends. Yeah, refusing to give up. If it's something you want to do, you don't usually need discipline to do something you want to do. You only need discipline for things that you don't like doing. So if you like making what you're making, it's not really a problem.